Welcome to today's Explainer. We are tackling a subject today that acts as the hidden engine behind every major corporate triumph out there. But on the flip side, it's also often the silent culprit behind some pretty spectacular failures. We're talking about mastering organizational design to scale effectively. Specifically, we're looking at how to synchronize divisional structures so that a company doesn't just grow in size, but actually succeeds in its overarching strategy. If you've ever wondered how the gears of a massive organization either mesh together perfectly or, well, just grind to an agonizing halt, you are absolutely in the right place. So here's a question for you. Why do some massive companies innovate at lightning speed while others entirely stall out? We tend to think that more resources, more people, and sheer size automatically equal a competitive edge, right? But the reality? Sometimes sheer size and abundant resources actually kill innovation rather than helping it. A company's structure can literally become a labyrinth where great ideas just get lost in the bureaucracy. Today, we're going to decode exactly how organizational structures regulate and sometimes completely hamper a company's overarching strategy. Here is our roadmap for today. First, defining divisional structures. Second, the Samsung example. Third, features and frictions. And fourth, synchronizing for strategic success. Okay, let's dive into this. Starting with Section 1. Defining divisional structures, or the basics of organizational grouping. Before we can fix a machine, we need to know how it's built. So let's lay down the theoretical foundation. What exactly is a divisional, or product structure? Basically, it groups talent based on the common nature of the service they provide, which is usually distinguished by geography or specific product lines. Under this model, the divisions are fundamentally distinct. They operate with their own dedicated departments, effectively functioning as highly specialized mini-companies living under one massive corporate umbrella. What is absolutely critical to understand here is the operational isolation. Each division is built to stand on its own 2 feet to carry out its specific activities. Moving right along to Section 2, the Samsung example, where we'll see the structure in action. Abstract business theories are always best understood when we can anchor them to real-world applications, right? So let's look at Samsung. They deal in a massive array of products, but specifically, they deal in smartphones as well as broader electronic goods. Because of this, they utilize a divisional structure, featuring entirely separate divisions, namely an electronics division and a smartphone division. Because they are completely distinct, each division carries out its own operational activities. They aren't just sharing one giant pool of resources. Instead, each division has a complete functional model right within itself. The smartphone division has what it needs to make smartphones, and the electronics division has exactly what it needs to make electronics. That brings us to Section 3, Features and Frictions, the mechanics and risks of divisional grouping. At first glance, the divisional structure looks incredibly clean and efficient. Let's start with the positives, the key features that actually drive operational success. The primary feature is that the massive organization is divided into smaller, much more manageable groups. And within each of these groups, you have highly specialized functional areas. We're talking about dedicated IT, finance, or marketing teams strictly for that specific division. By doing this, the exact same skill sets are grouped based on functional activities. When you group similar skill sets logically by function within a division, the source material tells us this directly leads to better operational results. You essentially build highly focused, specialized task forces dedicated to a specific product or geography. But there is a dark side to all this specialization. When you create these semi-autonomous groups, you introduce a massive operational risk, siloing. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how mismanagement and a lack of coordination between these different functional groups acts as the primary antagonist to a company's growth. If the divisions stop talking to each other, or if they are mismanaged, the company experiences a direct decrease in flexibility and a sharp drop in innovation. Instead of being an agile giant, the company becomes rigid and totally disconnected. And the friction really compounds as the company grows. The source highlights a core problem here. A company's overall strategy absolutely requires all decision-makers to be on board. But if an organization balloons and has way too many business divisions, getting everyone aligned becomes incredibly difficult. Too many divisions actively hamper strategy. It makes overarching strategic decisions incredibly hard to both frame properly and implement effectively. Suddenly, you aren't steering one single ship anymore. You are trying to herd a fleet of speedboats that all want to go in completely different directions. This brings us to our fourth and final section, synchronizing for strategic success, aligning execution with strategy. This is the most crucial part of our explainer today. How can leaders actually solve these structural frictions and expedite decision-making? Well, the solution starts right at the top. As the source material plainly states, a firm hand as a company leader and your conviction about your strategy are your keys to success. When an organization is vast and heavily divided, structural chaos is a natural threat. The absolute necessity to counter that chaos is a leader's personal conviction. Once a leader truly understands how their divisional structure simultaneously regulates and hampers strategic management, they can improve their ability to drive change. But it requires a firm hand to guide the ship. So, how does that firm leadership manifest? It breaks down into 4 critical steps to get division managers to buy into the process. First, as we just discussed, it requires firm leadership. Second, there must be absolute division head awareness. It is impossible to execute a strategy if an organization has so many divisions that framing strategic decisions becomes a mess. Therefore, every single divisional head must be keenly aware of the overarching organizational strategies. Third, the divisions have to work in tight coordination, syncing directly with the overall strategy of the firm. And fourth, they absolutely must sync between themselves. Let's look at a concrete example of that third step, syncing with the overarching strategy. And this brilliantly illustrates how top-level goals dictate divisional behavior. If the overall strategy of a firm is to gain a competitive advantage specifically through innovation, the divisions cannot act independently. In this scenario, the product development division and the R&D division absolutely have to work in perfect sync with that overall strategy. They must align their individual goals to serve the master plan of innovation. Think about your own R&D and product teams for a second. Are they building together or are they totally isolated? But it's not just about vertical alignment, looking up at the overarching strategy. The final synchronization point is horizontal. While the various divisions must perform in sync with the overall strategy, they have to work in coordination with each other as well. The overarching strategies shouldn't just be handed down. They should be specifically framed so that each division inherently works in sync with the other divisions. The divisions must be structurally encouraged to collaborate, ensuring that the right hand always knows exactly what the left hand is doing. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly important question to ponder. Look at your own teams, your own companies right now. Is your current organizational structure serving your overarching strategy, or is it silently sabotaging it? As we've seen today, a divisional structure can provide amazing operational focus, but without firm leadership, deep awareness, and deliberate synchronization, both vertically and horizontally, it can just as easily stifle innovation and create massive friction. I hope this explainer has given you a powerful new lens through which to view how you group your talent and execute your strategic vision. Keep learning, keep organizing, and we'll see you in the next explainer.